All right, so what makes the Catholic Church so powerful? What becomes a divine bureaucracy, okay? And what it does is establish a very strict hierarchy. So the idea of the church is that God is distant, and God demands your obedience, right? So remember Augustine, City of God, remember Paul, right? So one thing is that when you go to church, the priest doesn't speak in your language, the vernacular. It speaks in Latin, and you don't really understand the language, okay? You're not allowed to read the Bible, because at this time, most people are illiterate. The Holy Trinity makes no sense, but again, you're not asked to debate it, you're not asked to question it, you just have to memorize it. There are lots of rituals to the Catholic Church. Some of these rituals are just really weird. So for example, of the Eucharist, where you believe that you're actually eating the body and blood of Jesus through the idea of transubstantiation, okay? The church is powerful because it can determine who goes to heaven and hell and for how long. And ultimately, if you are a king and you don't obey the church, the Pope can excommunicate you, which is to say, I remove you from the Christian community, and therefore any other king can come and kill you, and it'll be good in the eyes of God. Okay, does that make sense? So this is why the church is so powerful, but also helps us explain why the church is so corrupt as well. They have too much power. And ultimately, they will use this power in order to enrich themselves, okay? Remember, the Catholic Church, the people who control the Catholic Church are descendants of the Roman nobility, okay? And they will use Catholic Church to enrich themselves. They set up something called indulgences. And the idea is, let's say you're a rich person and you did a lot of bad things, and now you're afraid you'll burn in hell, right? Well, Jesus will say, too bad. But the Catholic Church says, give us a lot of money and we'll give you an indulgence, okay? Basically, a ticket to purgatory, all right? And so as you can see, there's a lot of corruption going on. There's something called simony, where you can buy and sell positions in the Catholic Church, very similar to the imperial bureaucracy of China, right? They're selling holy relics. Priests are not really divine. They get married. They sell their positions to nobles. And the kings are the ones who can appoint leaders of the church as well, okay? So there's this negotiation going on between the Catholic Church and the kings as well. The parishioners, no matter how poor they are, they're forced to pay a tax. They pay a tax to the Catholic Church and not to the king, okay? As you can imagine, the king is not really happy about this, because a third of his land, most of his tax revenue, it's being taken over by the Catholic Church. So that's why a lot of kings will eventually start to rebel against the Catholic Church, okay? The church controls 1/3 of all land in Europe tax-free, okay? And this leads to feudalism. All right. So at the same time, though, even though the Catholic Church is so powerful in Europe, it still has a legitimacy problem, okay? Meaning, like, how does it prove that it is truly divine? Well, you have some certain problems. The first problem is the Muslims occupy the Holy Land. Okay? If you truly represent God, why is Jerusalem in the hands of the Muslims? Okay? Also, Spain is part of Europe, but Muslim Spain is actually much more wealthy and innovative than the rest of Europe. 1054, the Eastern Orthodox Church, led by the Byzantines, break with the Catholic Church. Okay? Because both want to be the ultimate center of the world, but the Byzantine says that we're the center, and the Romans say, no, we're the center, okay? And there's corruption going on, okay? Everyone sees the corruption, but there's also lots of religious leaders who are rebelling against Catholic Church because they want to unleash a divine spark, okay? So there's all this legitimacy problems going on. And so there are different solutions, okay? One solution the Catholic Church does is that it persecutes Jews, okay? So the Catholic Church allows Jews to exist just so that the Catholic Church can scapegoat the Jews. And throughout this time, as you can see, Jews are being persecuted mainly by being forced out of their homes, where they lived for hundreds of years. Okay? And a lot of them are forced to go east into the Muslim empire and to go to Spain. Okay? But over time, they're being expelled from these regions. This is another map that shows the persecution of the Jews. As you can see, they're forced to go east. Okay? And often, there are lots of massacres as well. Okay? So the black spots, okay, the skull spots, are areas in which they were massacred. They were blamed for certain crimes. Okay? All right. So this is a map that shows the pilgrimages of Christians into the Holy Land. Okay? And again, it's a source of embarrassment for the Christians that their Holy Land is occupied by Muslims. And they have to pay a tax to the Muslims if they go into the Holy Land. Right now, the Holy Land, Jerusalem, is being controlled by the Seljuk Turks, okay? The Ottoman Empire. All right, and that's why Pope Urban II will eventually call for the Crusades to liberate the Holy Land from the Muslims. Okay, so can you read, please?
All who die by the way, whether by land or by sea, or in battle against the pagans, shall have immediate remission of sins. Oh, what a disgrace if such a despised and base race, which worship demons, should conquer a people which has the face of omnipotent God and is made glorious with the name of Christ.
Okay.
Let those who have been accustomed unjustly to wage private warfare against the faithful now go against the infidels and end with victory this war, which should have been begun long ago. Let those who for a long time have been robbers now become knights. Let those who have been fighting against the brothers and relatives now fight in the proper way against the barbarians. Let those who have been serving as mercenaries for small pay now obtain the eternal reward.
Okay, so this is Pope Urban II saying the Crusades. It's to go and fight the demons. If you fight a demon, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be poor, you could be rich, you could be a sinful person, you could be a nobody. But now is your opportunity to go to heaven, okay? Like when you go to fight the demons, you will all be guaranteed access to heaven, no matter who you are, no matter what you did. And so a lot of people go and join the Crusades for lots of different reasons, especially those who've committed crimes before, okay? So guess what? A lot of people who join the Crusades are criminals because here's your opportunity to get good with the church, okay? That's why we see a lot of abuse during the Crusades, okay? So as you can see, lots of people are now joining the Crusades in order to liberate the Holy Land. And eventually they succeed, okay? Even though a lot are criminals, they're still very good fighters because they have religious devotion, okay? They're very energetic. And unfortunately, they're too energetic, so they have a tendency to massacre people when they succeed because they literally see the Muslims and the Jews as demons. That's what the Pope taught them. One organization that developed during the Crusades is called the Knights Templars. Okay, this is very important. We'll be discussing Knights Templars later on. Okay, but the Knights Templars is really the first multinational bank because these pilgrims are going to the Holy Land and they need to bring money with them to fund the journey. But if they take a lot of money with them, then they'll get robbed, right? So what they'll do is they'll give the money to the Knights Templars. And then when they get to Jerusalem, the Knights Templars will give the money back to them, okay? So they're a bank, basically. And then they can use this money to start investing throughout Europe. And so they become a very wealthy organization. The problem is that because they're in Jerusalem and they're away from the authority of the Catholic Church, they start to embrace new ideas. They start to discover the true nature of Jesus from the Muslims and from other Christians in that area. And so the church thinks that to become more corrupt over time. And that's why Their leader, Jacques de Molay, he is burnt at the stake, and in 1307, the organization is banned by the Catholic Church. But a lot of the survivors, they will go over to other places, and they will form the basis of a secret society we call the Freemasons, okay? So we'll discuss the Freemasons later on. Okay, there's also something called the Albigensian Crusade. So there are still individuals who believe in the divine spark, okay? And these people are called the Cathars. And the church sees them as a threat. And that's why they launched a crusade against these Cathars, okay? So can you read, Alan?
Simon and many of his soldiers made determined effort to convert the Cathar perfect but failed.
Okay, so again, the Catholic Church is, if you disagree with us, it doesn't mean you're a heretic, it just means you're stupid. So so we first want to educate you in what is right, okay? But the Cathars believe that, no, the divine spark is in me, I know the truth for myself. You can never convince me, okay? Keep on going.
Ultimately, only 3 women recanted. The 140 who refused were burned at the stake. Some entered the flames voluntarily, not awaiting their executioners.
So if you believe in the divine spark, okay, if you believe you've discovered truth, you're not afraid of death. So the Catholics are saying, like, if you don't recant, we'll burn you at the stake. The Catholics are like, good. Keep on going.
In August, the crusade proceeded to besiege the stronghold of Termus. Despite sallies from period Roger, the cabaret, the siege was solid. The occupants of Termus suffered from a shortage of water, and Raymond de Termus agreed to a temporary truce. The Cathars were briefly relieved by an intense rainstorm, and so Raymond refused to surrender. Ultimately, the defenders were not able to break the siege, and on 22 November, the Cathars managed to abandon the city and escape. By the time operations resumed in 1211, the actions of Honored Armory and Simon de Montfort had alienated several important lords, including Raymond de Toulouse, who has been excommunicated again.
Okay, so as you can see, what's really important to understand is the crusade against Cathars is not just a religious crusade, it's also one of geopolitics, where the local lords resent the power of the Catholic Church, and so they support the Cathars, okay? All right, so, and this is going to happen throughout Europe. So the response of the church is to establish a new society led by Francis of Assisi called the Dominicans, okay, the Dominicans, which goes and basically tries to figure out who the Cathars are, okay, by interrogating everyone. All right, and this leads to, of course, the Inquisition, okay. And so the idea is that if you disagree with church orthodoxy, they will figure it out. And if you refuse to recant, if you refuse to obey, they will burn you at the stake, okay? So at this time in history, because of the Inquisition, because of the power of the Catholic Church, Western Europe is one of the least innovative places in the world, okay? All right, and at first this is fine, but eventually bad things start to happen in Europe, okay? So the little ice age begins, then you have the Great Famine, then you have more wars, then you have banditry, okay? And then of course you have the Black Death. So if the Catholic Church represents the will of God, and all this is happening, then is God really happy with the Catholic Church, right? So this is a Black Death, which kills about 1/3 of the European population. And people, because they're religious, they think that this is the will of God. It's because the Catholic Church, it's corrupt, it's evil, it's stagnant. That's why God is punishing us, okay? And this will lead to conflict within Europe, where the Catholic Church is actually broken into different parts as well, okay? So there are some who believe that Rome is the true center of the Catholic Church, but there are other people who believe that Avignon okay, is the true center of the Catholic Church. And this creates even more legitimacy problems with the Catholic Church. All right, and then you have individuals who will emerge to challenge the orthodoxy of the Catholic Church. Okay, so this is Fray Docena. We won't read. John Wycliffe is a British person who was he was not punished when he was alive, but afterwards, after he died, they decided he was a heretic. So what they did was they dug up his body and then burned him at the stake to make sure he burned in hell. Okay. Jan Hus will lead a revolution, okay? And this is called the Husic Wars. And none of them succeed, but then another man will emerge called Martin Luther, who will eventually lead a successful revolution against Catholic Church, and this is called Protestantism, okay? And we'll discuss Martin Luther next class. Next class we'll discuss the rise of capitalism, all right?